So one day when I was in Walmart shopping for pet supplies, I came across this reduced beta cube. So I decided to buy it to see why the price had been reduced. Now that I got it home, let's open it up and see what we got. At first I didn't see anything wrong with it, and that was until I pulled down the plastic. And here we can see it has a good sized crack coming from one of the corners. If I had to guess, I'd say they probably dropped this at one point. But aside from that, it does look like a nice decent tank. And for what I'm going to use it for, I don't think this crack will be much of an issue. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and begin. We will start by building our water drip system onto our lid. And for that, I will use some air hose and a T-connector. First, we will connect both ends of our hoses to our connector, position it onto our lid, and then glue it down. Once it's been fully glued down, we will then poke several small holes in it. And once that's done, I glued a piece of mesh onto the inside, which will act as sort of a vent hole. Now at the center of our lid, I will be adding in a small but bright LED light. But in order to do that, I will first need to drill out a hole that is the exact size as our bulb. This process does throw around several shavings, so let me go ahead and finish this outside. Now with the hole drilled out to proper size, I can now begin to fit in our light. I do kind of have to force it in there a bit, so it has a pretty firm hold. And if I ever should need to replace it, all I have to do is apply some pressure and it pops right out. And that completes our lid and drip system. Now to start working on our tank. First I will begin by measuring the height of our tank onto some corrugated plastic. Next to measure the length of our tiny pump and mark that down as well. Now to cut it where we marked it down until the two lines intersect. Then we will cut out another sheet identical to the first one we just cut out. With our two pieces cut out, we will now begin to position them inside the tank, and this will be the housing for our small pump. Once I found a good spot, I went ahead and glued the two pieces together using some hot glue. As you can see, there's some extra bit of material sticking out, so we're just going to go ahead and cut that out. So after trimming the extra material away, I also cut a small hole into one side of the plastic. This side will be the water inlet for our pump. Now to prevent our pump from sucking up any debris, we will be gluing some filter mesh onto the front and back side of our hole. Now same as before, to trim away any extra material. Now to position it and glue it onto the tank itself. Now that we have that glued down, we can now begin to create our background. This will cover the entire backside of the tank, as well as our water pump cover. We will be using the mesh as sort of a reference point as to how far down we will go, and be careful to not cover it up. I will be using some black spray foam to create our background, but as you can see, the top sort of popped off when I was making this video, so unfortunately you won't be able to see me actually spray it on, but you will be able to see the results after. Now after spraying one side, I then added some black rocks onto it, and you can see that I stopped right before hitting the mesh. Now to allow this to expand and dry, and once that's done, we will continue the same process onto the other side. Now that that's finished, let's go ahead and flip this over and do the same thing to the other side. now that everything's dry, we will now begin to cut out any extra foam that may have spilled over and begin carving and shaping out our background. And after doing all that, this is what it looks like. With all that done, we now have one solid background. Now time to add on the details that will really bring it to life. First, I will be applying some black aquarium silicone on top of our foam. Now I can't exactly get the nozzle in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding some into this cup and then applying it using a stick. My goal is to cover up only the foam and not the rocks. We want those to be as visible as possible. Once that's all covered up, this is what it looks like. As you can see, the rocks are still very visible and I did not add silicone to the top. Now the next step is to cover it using some substrate. For that, we will be using some dry coconut husk. It's important that the husk is completely dry because otherwise it will not stick. Now to sprinkle it all on top of the silicone and press it down so that it gets a firm hold on the substrate. Once you are sure that everything has been properly covered, go ahead and knock off any extra material that did not stick. And one thing that I have to point out is the silicone that I'm using releases a very strong odor, so if you can, I recommend doing this outside. Now to take this outside and allow it to dry for at least 3 days. With our background now complete, we will now add on the first layer to our mini forest floor. First, I will be adding in a small layer of lava rock. Next, we will need to lay in a sheet of weed barrier to separate the first layer from the next. I will be placing the tank on top of the sheet and then cutting it out around it, thus getting the shape of the tank. Once that's in there, we will then be adding on some gravel. Now to cover that up with another sheet, and then adding in a layer of leca. I recommend using the smaller pellets, but I only had large ones at the time, so I had to crush them into small pieces, but they will work just the same. And finally, to add in some aqua soil until it reaches to the bottom part of our background. Now with our mini forest floor complete, I will now be adding in some water until it barely reaches our top layer. And now you will see that thanks to our many layers of filtration, the water is nice and clear. Now to add in the pump and connect our hoses. Now our main hose is a little bit too small, so using a slightly bigger hose, I was able to adapt it onto our pump. Now to plug it in and show you how the pump will be working. Once we've ensured that the pump is working properly, we will fill in this gap with some filter mesh to prevent anything from falling inside. Now time for my favorite part, which is adding in the decorations and live plants. Now I will be silent for this next part, but I will be adding in the materials and plants I use as the video goes along. So enough talking and let's get right into it. Now time to add in our little friends who will be the cleanup crew to our little ecosystem. First I will be adding in a few garden snails of various sizes. And since they've all decided to stick onto the lid, this will make it much easier to add them in all at the same time. And then I will also be adding in a few isopods. However, I've been calling these guys roly-polies my whole life, so go ahead and call them whatever you want. Now let's give these guys some time to get used to their new environment. Now after adding in one final plant and making sure that our little guys have settled in well, we are now ready to connect and add on our lid. Now with our lid on and water system connected, all we need to do now is connect the light. And now we have light. Now technically I am finished building this terrarium, but this will be a new home for one of my pets, so I think technically that makes this a vivarium. I still get those two mixed up, so let me know down in the comments below. Here we have a baby yellow belly toad. No, he's not a coward, he literally has a yellow belly. I already have several fire bellies, so I figured it was time to get one of a different color. And this little guy is really small, so I won't have to worry about him eating any of the isopods or snails. Now all that's left to do now is to add him in. I'd say it came out pretty nice, and I'm hoping my little friend agrees so too. And not to worry, once my little friend starts to grow, I will add him to a much bigger home. I really enjoyed making this environment, so thank you for watching till the end. So if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more future habitat builds and animal related content. As always, this has been Reptile and More, and I will see you guys on the next one.